On August 5, 2025, the news broke quietly. Ravn, Alaska was shutting down, effective immediately. There was no fanfare, no warning, just a sudden announcement that rippled through the state like a shockwave. For many, it was hard to believe that an airline so deeply woven into the fabric of Alaskan life could simply vanish overnight. For remote villages, it was as if the only bridge to the outside world had vanished overnight. These flights weren't just about travel, they were about medicine, mail, groceries, and hope. Suddenly, the lifeline that connected families, delivered supplies, and brought news from afar was gone. The sky, their lifeline, was suddenly closed. The familiar hum of propellers, once a daily comfort, faded into memory, replaced by an uneasy stillness. New Pacific Airlines, Ravn's parent company, made the call, citing tangled finances and failed ambitions. The result? Grounded flights, shuttered counters, and a sense of abandonment that spread faster than the news itself. And a sudden, chilling silence. Airports that once buzzed with activity now echoed with emptiness, their purpose erased in a single day. 270 jobs disappeared in an instant, leaving families uncertain and communities reeling. For many employees, it wasn't just a job lost, but a way of life. But the deeper loss was the isolation that swept over dozens of communities. In places where roads don't reach, the absence of air service is more than an inconvenience. It's a crisis. This wasn't just a business closing, it was a lifeline cut. The chains on the propellers and padlocked gates symbolized a sudden end to connection and opportunity. The decision came from a distant boardroom, far from Alaska's gravel runways. Executives in suits weighed numbers, but the consequences were felt thousands of miles away, in villages where every flight mattered. New Pacific's gamble on bigger dreams left Ravn and rural Alaska behind. Ambitions to expand elsewhere meant sacrificing the very communities that depended on them most. For Alaskans, the shutdown felt like betrayal. No warning, no transition, just silence. Passengers stranded, plans upended, and a sense of trust broken. One day the planes flew, the next they didn't. The change was abrupt, leaving no time to prepare, no chance to say goodbye to a way of life. It was a stark reminder of how fragile life is in the far north, where existence depends on services that can vanish overnight. In winter, when snow and ice close every other route, the loss of air travel is felt even more deeply. The silence over villages like Aniak and Unalakleet was more than the absence of engines. It was the echo of a broken promise. The wind carried not just cold, but uncertainty and worry for the future. In Alaska, the loss of an airline isn't just inconvenience, it's a threat to survival. Essential goods, medical emergencies, and family reunions all depend on those flights. The void left behind was immediate and profound. Hangars stood empty, runways unused, and hope seemed to drift away with the last departing plane. The collapse exposed the vulnerability of communities built on thin, essential connections. It was a wake-up call for everyone who calls Alaska home. In the end, Ravn's fall was a casualty of distant decisions and corporate missteps. The handshake in a faraway office meant heartbreak in the north. The sky over Alaska was left empty, and the people below were left to pick up the pieces. In the vast silence, the true cost of losing Ravn, Alaska became painfully clear, a reminder that in the farthest reaches, every connection counts and every loss is felt deeply. In Alaska's remote villages, air travel is survival, not luxury. For many, the hum of a small plane overhead is as essential as running water or electricity. These flights are the arteries that keep life flowing in places where the wilderness stretches for hundreds of miles in every direction. With no roads connecting most communities, planes become ambulances, school buses, and grocery trucks all rolled into one. They deliver everything from fresh produce to life-saving medicine, and they carry children to school and elders to medical care. Ravn, Alaska was the thread tying these communities to the world beyond the tundra. For decades, its planes stitched together a patchwork of isolated villages, making the impossible possible every single day. When Ravn stopped flying, the impact was instant and severe. The silence on the runways was deafening, and the sense of loss was immediate. Medicine, food, and mail were stranded, medical appointments and family visits were canceled. Shelves in village stores emptied quickly, and critical supplies piled up waiting for a plane that would never come. The shutdown wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a crisis. Emergency services were left waiting, and families grew anxious as days passed with no news or deliveries. People felt abandoned, left to face uncertainty and isolation. The sense of being cut off from the rest of the world grew heavier with each passing day. The abrupt closure left no time to adapt, no alternatives in place. Villagers were left scrambling, unsure how to get essentials or reach loved ones in emergencies. The dependency on a single airline became painfully clear. With no backup, the vulnerability of these communities was exposed for all to see. Even the most resilient communities need a link to the outside. The arrival of a plane was more than a delivery, it was a reminder that they were not forgotten. The end of Ravn's service threatened the very viability of rural life. Without reliable air service, the future of these villages hung in the balance. It forced a hard question: how can people stay if they can't count on basic connections? For some, the only option was to consider leaving the place they called home. The silence of Ravn's planes was a challenge to the future of rural Alaska. Each empty runway was a stark reminder of how fragile life can be on the edge of the world. The loss was personal, urgent, and deeply felt. For many, it was more than the end of a service. It was the severing of a lifeline and the beginning of an uncertain chapter. Ravn, Alaska's story is woven into Alaska's own history. Born from bush pilots and small carriers, it became a symbol of endurance and connection. For decades, Ravn's planes braved weather and distance to serve the state's farthest corners. But the costs of flying in Alaska, fuel, maintenance, staffing, grew relentless. Ravn shrank, dropping routes, struggling to survive. Then came New Pacific Airlines with global ambitions and little interest in rural Alaska. Resources shifted away and Ravn's core mission was lost. The collapse wasn't just a business failure, it was the end of an era. Empty hangars and silent runways now marked the loss of a vital legacy. Ravn's fall is a cautionary tale about the fragility of regional airlines and the cost of corporate neglect. Ravn's fate was sealed far from Alaska's villages, in a boardroom focused on global dreams. New Pacific Airlines wanted to launch a low-cost international carrier, using Anchorage as a hub. Ravn's steady essential business became an afterthought. The parent company's resources and attention shifted to a risky, unproven venture. As New Pacific's ambitions faltered, Ravn was left to wither. Community leaders saw the mismanagement coming, but their warnings went unheeded. Ravn wasn't just another airline, it was critical infrastructure. When the gamble failed, Ravn was sacrificed to cover the losses. The fallout was devastating for Alaskans, who had no say in the decision. The story is a stark lesson. When corporate priorities ignore local needs, communities pay the price. Rural Alaska was left isolated by a gamble it never chose. The consequences were immediate and deeply felt. Ravn's shutdown sent shockwaves through Alaska. The mail piled up, businesses lost supplies, and grocery shelves went bare. The U.S. Postal Service scrambled to find alternatives, but delays mounted. Small businesses struggled, prices rose, and the cost of living soared. Healthcare access suffered, patients missed appointments, clinics ran low on supplies, families were separated, students stranded, and communities cut off from each other. The loss of air service tore at the social fabric, fraying vital connections. The crisis exposed just how fragile rural life is when a single link fails. The consequences weren't just logistical, they were deeply human. Missed opportunities, heightened anxiety, and a sense of abandonment spread. The shutdown was a reminder: in Alaska, every flight matters. The ripple effects touched every corner of life. Recovery would be slow and uncertain. After Ravn's collapse, Alaska Airlines became the state's best hope. The airline quickly pledged to fill the gap, but the challenge was immense. Alaska Airlines flies larger jets, needing long paved runways, unlike Ravn's nimble turboprops. Many remote villages remained unreachable. The economics of rural aviation are brutal, and replicating Ravn's model was no easy task. Still, Alaska Airlines restored service to some larger communities, stabilizing the network. Their intervention prevented a total collapse, but it was only a partial fix. The smallest, most isolated villages were still left out. The crisis forced the industry to confront the hard question: how to build a sustainable model for rural air service? The search for answers had only just begun. Ravn's collapse became a political crisis overnight. Alaska's leaders faced pressure to restore essential services and prevent future failures. The Essential Air Service program came under scrutiny. Was it enough, and was it working? Lawmakers called for reforms and emergency funding. The debate exposed the tension between market forces and public necessity. For rural Alaskans, this wasn't theory. It was about survival. The crisis sparked talk of public-private partnerships and state-supported air service. With winter looming, the need for solutions was urgent. The shutdown forced a reckoning with Alaska's commitment to its most remote citizens. Out of Ravn's collapse, new opportunities emerged. Smaller airlines like Grant Aviation and Ryanair stepped up, expanding into abandoned routes. The transition was slow, New routes required investment, aircraft, and regulatory approval. The Essential Air Service program helped, offering contracts to willing carriers. Innovation followed. Some communities explored regional air co-ops, others looked to new technologies like drones. The recovery was patchwork, with multiple carriers filling the gaps. No single airline could replace Ravn, but together, they rebuilt the network. The crisis sparked resilience and creativity across Alaska. Communities, businesses, and government worked together to forge a new future. The process was messy, but the sound of engines slowly returned to the sky. Alaska's spirit endured, adapting to a new reality. August 18, 2025, the skies over Alaska are no longer silent. After months of uncertainty, the first rays of hope break through the clouds, signaling a new beginning for communities that once felt isolated and forgotten. The shock of Ravn's collapse has given way to determined rebuilding. What was once a symbol of loss now stands as a testament to the resilience and unity of Alaskans, who refused to let their vital connections fade away. New carriers have stepped in to restore vital links, and the flow of mail, medicine, and people resumes. Every flight that lands brings not just supplies, but a renewed sense of connection and hope to remote villages. The crisis left scars, abandoned runways, empty terminals, but also a stronger resolve to protect rural connections. Communities have learned the importance of standing together to safeguard their future. The future will be more diverse, with multiple carriers and renewed government support. Competition and collaboration now promise a more stable and reliable network for everyone. Policymakers now see these routes as lifelines, not just business lines. They recognize that air travel is essential for survival, health, and opportunity in Alaska's vast and challenging landscape. Local communities are more engaged and vocal, shaping their own transportation future. Residents are taking an active role, ensuring their voices are heard and their needs are met. The lesson is clear: self-advocacy and collective action matter. When people come together, they can influence decisions and create lasting change for their region. A cautious optimism is returning. Planes on the horizon bring relief, not anxiety. Each arrival is a reminder that Alaska's spirit endures, and that brighter days are ahead. The new system must be nurtured, but hope is real. With every repaired runway and every new route, confidence grows that this progress will last. Alaska's resilience has been tested, but it endures. Through harsh winters and uncertain times, the people and their spirit remain unbroken. Out of one airline's failure, a stronger network is being built. New infrastructure and partnerships are laying the foundation for a more connected future. The last frontier is flying forward, one flight at a time. With every journey, Alaska's communities are reminded that hope truly is on the horizon.